I still remember the night my world split open a second time. The night gunfire tore across the plains, and the past I had buried under stone and whiskey clawed made its way back into the light. They say a man who's lived alone long enough becomes like the desert itself, hard, dry, and barren of hope. For 15 years, I had been just that. Folks in town called me the Stone Cowboy, and maybe they were right. My name is James Lawson, though most just call me Cole. And for more than a decade, I'd lived alone on a patch of land where the wind mourned louder than I ever dared to. My wife had been gone 15 years, taken in blood and fire, and I'd sworn to stay faithful to her memory till the day the earth took me. I never thought I'd have to break that oath. That night, air was hot and dry enough to crack your lips, but the gunfire snapped through the stillness like lightning. I had been riding fence lines, half drunk on rye, when I heard the screams, high, panicked, desperate. My first thought was to ride on. I'd done that before, left other men's fights to themselves. But something in that cry cut through me sharper than any blade, and before I knew it, my mare was pounding over the ridge, ears flat. Hoofs striking sparks from the rocks. Below, a gang of riders swarmed a lone wagon, their laughter echoing in the canyon like the howls of coyotes. The fire from their pistols lit the night in ugly flashes. A man was already down, his body sprawled in the dust. And then I saw her young woman, hair loose and catching firelight like copper, scrambling backward as a bandit leaned from his saddle, reaching for her. I drew before my mind had even caught up. The shot cracked, and the outlaw pitched from his horse. His friends wheeled in surprise. Another shot, another rider down. But there were too many, circling like buzzards, eyes wild for the kill. I drove straight into them, firing, cursing, the old fury in my blood roaring back to life. For the first time in years, I felt my heart pounding, not with grief, but with the raw instinct to protect. By the time the smoke cleared, lay dead, the rest riding hard for the horizon. My mare stamped and snorted, sweat shining on her flank. I sat in the saddle, breathing hard, gun heavy in my hand, until the silence returned like a suffocating blanket. The woman was still there, huddled against the wagon wheel. Dirt smeared her cheek, blood oozed from a scrape at her temple, but her eyes, those eyes, held defiance as sharp as barbed wire. She looked at me like I was both savior and threat, like she hadn't decided whether to thank me or spit in my face. "You hurt?" I asked, my voice rough from disuse. She shook her head once, then tried to stand, faltering when her ankle gave out. I dismounted against every instinct and caught her by the elbow. She stiffened, tried to pull away, but didn't have the strength. "Name's Cole," I muttered. "James Lawson. My place is a few miles west. You won't make it far alone." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue. But then she glanced at the bodies cooling in the dirt and nodded once. "Clara," she said. "Clara Morgan." I lifted her into the saddle, swung up behind, and we rode into the night. When we reached my ranch, the place was quiet, the old porch creaking under our boots as I carried her inside. I hadn't brought anyone through that door in years, not since the night my wife's laughter had died there. The smell of dust and wood smoke hung heavy. I laid her on the old sofa, fetched water from the pump, bandaged her scrape with hands that shook more than I wanted her to notice. She watched me the whole time, steady, curious, too alive. When she finally slept, I sat by the fire, staring at the mantel where my wife's photograph rested in its frame. Her eyes, frozen in sepia, seemed to accuse me. I whispered into the flames, "Don't worry, I ain't letting anyone in." Not really, but the next morning Clara woke and saw that same picture. I watched her expression shift: recognition, sorrow, then understanding. She touched the frame gently, like she knew not to disturb a ghost. "You loved her," she said softly. "Still do." She didn't answer, just lowered her hand and smiled, the kind of smile that says she'd already decided to carry some of the weight for me. Whether I wanted her to or not, I tried to send her away. God help me, I did. Told her the town was a day's ride, that she could catch a stage west, but she only shook her head. "Not yet. I'll help here." "You need it," I laughed bitterly. "Don't need anyone," but she stayed anyway, and I let her. For days, she moved about the cabin, cooking, sweeping, humming under her breath, little sounds of life I hadn't heard in years. At night I lay awake, listening, hating the part of me that didn't hate it. Then the riders came back. It was near sundown when I heard the hooves, saw the dust rising from the east. A half-dozen men, faces hard, eyes fixed on my cabin. They wanted her. I thought she carried something worth dying for. Gold. Land papers. Who knew? All I knew was they weren't taking her from me. I sent her inside, told her to stay low, then walked out with my rifle in hand. The leader grinned, yellow teeth flashing. "Hand over the girl, old man. Maybe we'll let you live." "Try me," I said. The first shot split the evening wide open. The fight was chaos smoke, shouting, the crack of rifles, the burn of powder in my nose. I dropped one, then another, but a bullet grazed my arm, hot pain flooding down to my hand. I thought I'd fall until I heard her voice from the porch, "Cole," and the fire in me surged back. When it was over, 3 more bodies littered my yard, and the rest fled into the dark. My breath came ragged, my arm bled, but she was safe. She ran to me, eyes wide, hands trembling as she pressed cloth to my wound. And for the first time, I let her touch stay. The town heard about it by morning. By noon, whispers started. James Lawson, the Stone Cowboy, keeping a young woman at his place. Folks who once pitied me now looked with suspicion, even contempt. Men muttered in the saloon. Women shook their heads in church. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. I told myself I didn't care. Told myself my vow still held. But then one night I found a handkerchief on my table, stitched with the name Cole in careful thread. My fingers hovered over it, trembling like a green boy's. Picking it up would have been easy. Too easy. So I left it there, walked away like a coward, my chest burning with guilt I couldn't shake. I thought I could keep the walls up. But then came the raid on town. A different gang this time, meaner, hungrier. They rode in at noon, shooting up windows, setting fire to the feed store. I should have stayed at the ranch, kept my head down, but I couldn't. I strapped on my gun and rode in. The street was Hellman, shouting, women running, children crying. Smoke billowed, bullets sang. I fought like a man possessed, dropping outlaw after outlaw. Then I saw her Clara, darting into the chaos to pull a crying boy from the dirt. My blood froze. A bullet whined past her head. She stumbled, the boy clinging to her, and in that moment, everything in me broke loose. I cut through the fight. Seized her into my arms, pulled her and the boy into cover. "Damn fool girl," I growled, voice cracking with terror. She only looked at me, eyes wide, lips parted like she had seen into the hollow of my soul. We survived. The gang was driven out, though half the town lay in ruin. When the smoke cleared, she stood beside me, her hand brushing mine. I didn't pull away. Couldn't that night by the fire, she told me about her parents, about the life she lost, the home she wanted. Her voice was soft but steady, painting pictures of family and warmth I had long forgotten. For the first time in 15 years, I let myself imagine what it would be like to live again, not just exist. I didn't know then how much blood we'd still have to wade through. Didn't know she'd be taken from me, that I'd ride hellbent across the desert to bring her back. Didn't know the town itself would rise against us, calling our love a shame. All I knew was that the walls I'd built for so long were cracking, and in the space left behind, something wild and terrifying was growing. Love, and God help me. I didn't know if it would save me or destroy me. The morning after Clara first lay in my arms, the sun rose soft through the storm clouds, painting the plains in colors I hadn't noticed in years. I woke to the sound of her breathing, steady beside me. And for the first time in 15 long, lonesome years, I didn't feel like a man made of stone. The photograph of my late wife still sat on the mantel watching, but when my eyes found it, I did not flinch. I did not feel the stab of guilt that had long kept me shackled. Instead, I felt something I hadn't dared let myself in on. Peace. For the first time since that night of fire and blood, I allowed myself to smile. But peace on the frontier is like a mirage on the horizon, sweet, in promise, fleeting in truth. It never lasts long enough to be savored. By midday, Riders came with dust at their heels. Clara spotted them first from the porch, her hand tightening on the wooden rail. I followed her gaze. A column of men, hard-faced and mean-eyed, the kind who don't come calling for tea. My gut turned cold. These weren't stragglers. They were the remnants of every outlaw band I'd bloodied in the weeks past, drawn together by vengeance. "They've come for us," Clara whispered, though I already knew. I strapped on my gun belt, checked the rifle I'd oiled the night before, and for a moment the weight of it pulled me back to who I used to be. The Stone Cowboy, the man who fought with no reason left to live. But when I turned, I saw her standing there, her chin high, despite the fear in her eyes, and I realized I was no longer fighting only for ghosts. I was fighting for flesh and blood, for the woman who had taught me to breathe again. Word spread fast. The townsfolk who once whispered about me now gathered wide-eyed, watching the outlaw band ride down the valley. Some wanted to bolt, to let the outlaws take what they came for. Others clenched fists, torn between cowardice and pride. It fell to me to speak. "We can run," I told them, my voice carrying over the hush, "and they'll burn everything behind us. Or we can stand and fight like hell and show them this town ain't theirs to take." For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then one man stepped forward, then another. By the time the sun hit the ridge, a dozen rifles were in hand. The town had chosen. When the attack came, it came hard. The outlaws charged with wild yells, their horses kicking up scarlet dust. Bullets split the air, glass shattered, boards splintered. Smoke rolled through the street as barns caught fire, flames clawing toward the sky. I was everywhere at once, barking orders, trading shots, dragging the wounded to cover. Clara was there too, against my orders, a rifle braced in her hands. She fired steady, her face pale but set with a courage that shamed the men who had once doubted her. At one point, I lost sight of her. Panic gripped me harder than any bullet ever could. I found her kneeling beside a fallen boy, shielding him with her own body while rounds whined overhead. I pulled her up. Anger and terror tangled in my throat, but she only met my eyes and said, "If we fall together." I have never loved anyone more than I did in that instant. The fight raged into night. The street ran with dust and blood. Men screamed, horses bolted, fire roared. My shoulder burned with a bullet's kiss, and more than once I thought my legs would give way. But Clara's voice cut through the chaos, calling my name, pulling me back to my feet. Side by side, we stood and fired until the last of the gang broke and ran into the black horizon. When the smoke thinned, the town was still standing, barely, but standing. The people who had once sneered at me now looked with awe, with gratitude. They had seen me bleed for them, and they had seen Clara stand unflinching at my side. Whatever whispers they might have spoken before, none dared speak them now. In the square, with rain clouds rolling in from the west, I pulled Clara close. My voice carried across the gathering, steady, despite the blood on my shirt. "This woman," I said, "is the one I choose. I don't care who judges. I don't care who doubts. She is mine, and I am hers." Her tears spilled then, though her smile was bright through the wet. The people watched in silence as I slid from my pocket a simple gold band, the ring that had once bound me to my wife. For years I had guarded it like a relic of pain, but now, in the cool breath of rain, I pressed it into Clara's hand. "It's not a replacement," I whispered, "only for her. It's a promise, a new one." Thunder cracked overhead and the rain broke loose, soaking us as she slipped the ring on her finger. Around us, the townsfolk bowed their heads, not in disapproval, but in quiet acceptance. Some even clapped, a sound like a prayer carried on the rain. I kissed her then, hard and certain, while the heavens wept above us, and for once, I did not feel haunted. I felt alive. But the frontier is never without shadows. Even in that moment of triumph, I sensed eyes still watching, whispers still forming. Not every man in town had joined our fight, and not every enemy had fled. Clara's hand trembled in mine, not from fear, but from the weight of knowing this peace could not last. Later, as we lay beneath the patched roof of my cabin, rain drumming, a lullaby above, She traced the scar on my shoulder with her fingers. "They'll come again," she murmured. "Let them," I answered. Though inside I knew she was right. The outlaw world never forgets a grudge. Men in power, whether wearing dusted coats or uniforms, hate a love they cannot own or control. The firelight flickered over her face, painting her in shades of gold and shadow. I studied her, memorizing every line, every freckle, every curve of her lips. For years I had lived like a man already buried, and now, with her beside me, I feared more than death itself. I feared losing again. I pulled her close, holding her as if my arms could keep fate itself at bay. She whispered against my chest, "Don't let go," and I swore. To her, and to whatever gods still listened in the desert night, that I never would. Morning brought clear skies and the smell of smoke still clinging to the air. The town stirred like a man rising from a beating, bruised but not broken. People nodded at me as I passed, some even tipping their hats. Respect. Acceptance. A strange thing, there's so many years of cold shoulders. But under it all, I could feel the undercurrent, the knowledge that our fight had only just begun. Somewhere out there, more men were gathering, sharpening their knives, loading their rifles. Somewhere the frontier still waited to test us, and when it did, we would face it together.